All right, welcome to Blue Collar Interviews here. We got a fun guest on tonight. It's Mike, also known as the Gear Man on TikTok. Welcome
That'd
to.
be me, yeah.
Oh, the Gear Man. I've heard.
So to start off the podcast, we always what's your TikTok? Where can people reach you? And we recommend that they go pause the episode and then watch a few videos so that they know what we're talking about in the episode.
Yeah, Gearman_93 is my ID on there.
Is that the year you were born, I'm guessing?
Oh, a little young.
I wish. No, it's actually the year I graduated high school.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
Nice. So you do transmissions, eh?
Yep, sure do.
That's good because I understand nothing about transmission. So let's learn a little bit.
Mike loves to educate people on transmissions, and we've agreed sometimes, and we've definitely not agreed sometimes.
I'm curious. I've heard about the disagreements. I kind of want to hear about that. What's some of the spats you guys have had online? I want to know.
What is it? Probably the clutch issue?
The clutch. It'd be the clutch. Shifting a track transmission with the clutch or not.
You're in support of it. Whoa, okay. I'm already on the one side of this fight. I hate using clutch, so I want to know why I'm doing it wrong. I take it. You're on that side.
Well, the only thing is, years ago in Eaton School, they put the clutch in there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of people say it's just to start and stop with, but unfortunately, that is false.
Oh, I don't know about this.
See, and that's one of those things where I was always told driving truck, it's for starting and stopping. And I get it, and I've learned a lot, and I've listened to a lot of Mike's videos here, and I'm still in disagreement. I'm going to use that clutch for starting and stopping.
I don't have an argument. I'm sure you can educate me and I will be wrong in this issue, but all I know is that I know a lot of companies who none of the drivers use it, and they 2-3 million miles, then they dump a clutch or two in. Well, like they go a long time, and I don't know if they're saving any money, not like doing it the other way.
Well, I guess you can start us off. What does using that clutch in between gears, what strain does that help avoid?
Well, just to be perfectly clear, myself, sometimes, like I made a video the other day, I get into a different truck every day, and drive it, and they're all different. Different people's driven them different, and they just feel different. Like I can get in some trucks, and it just it slides in and out of gear so easily, but if you time it right, you can get it in there easily. But I'll say this: a new transmission, a brand new truck, a manual transmission, I would definitely want to start out using the clutch because everything's new and everything's tight, obviously. So when you mash down the clutch, it releases all the torque. A lot of people don't understand, but you have torque coming from the drivetrain as well, as far as, down a hill, as far as holding back and everything. And when you mash in the clutch, it releases all that torque to where you can make a good shift smooth, or a good smooth shift, so to speak. And like I say in a lot of my videos, it's just a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different cases, but for the majority, how's that?
I guess I'm not opposed to using the clutch. There's times where I will shift with the clutch in areas where I know my truck is under heavy torque load. Say you're pulling a huge hill or going down a hill and you've got just a ton of weight on you and you're in the basement gears. That's when I'll use that clutch to help break that torque in order to just keep it a little bit easier on that. But at highway speeds,
Yeah, I'll say this, well, obviously, you drive for a living somewhat, and, I can't say that I have.
Shots fired there, jeez.
No, that's fair. I used to drive for a living. I wish I did, but.
But, Yeah, I kind of forgot where I was going to go with this.
all good.
I don't know. I guess the way I look at it is that, like, being an owner operator for about the last 7 years, I guess the last year wasn't really much of an owner operator, but 6 years with that truck, and I never needed to change out a transmission or a clutch. And I look at the cost of a reman transmission, and I feel about that $8,000 mark, $10,000 mark. And for me, if you break down the total month, let's say 10 years running a truck without blowing out that transmission, works out to about $60 a month to not have to clutch.
I'd pay that any day of the week.
I would absolutely pay that to not have to do the double clutching constantly.
I have a bad left knee actually, so like trucking, like I have it's not that uncommon. It's a little disease in my leg called Osgood's. A lot of younger men get it. It usually goes away. Mine hasn't. And like I couldn't clutch all day. I couldn't, like, my knee wouldn't work that long. So I don't, and I don't think I will ever.
Yeah, I'll get into some trucks, like I said, and test drive them, and it's just so easy, and I can shift without the clutch myself. But then sometimes I get in some, and I just can't seem to find the right gear anywhere. So, I definitely start using the clutch then.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about that. What causes that? Both two trucks, both Cummins X15 ISX, both have 18 speeds. You hop in that Peterbilt, she shifts so butterly smooth that you can shift it with a pinky finger. You hop into a Western Star, same motor, same transmission, and it feels like I'm in day one driving school. What causes that?
Well, honestly, it's just who has driven it before and whether or not they wore down the the shift bar housing enough, in my opinion.
By not clutching.
Okay, so what shifts smoother? When it's worn down, does it shift smoother, or when it's not worn down, does it shift smoother?
I feel like I should be able to answer that, but I honestly can't. The thing is, like the older 8LLs, if you've driven those,
yeah,
the small ones like the 6613s and stuff, those, to me, a person out of high school could drive one of those and not use a clutch. I don't know, and I can take one apart, and I have, just to see the difference, and everything looks like new in there. I can't say, but but I do definitely think that a driver, kind of being tough on it and forcing things will kind of wear things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And, you got to remember, I'm getting things when they are worn out, so.
Yeah, I guess nobody brings the transmission to you when it's running real good. And
I got a weird one to ask. I know I've worked for one gravel company in town, and they had a 13 speed that they used as a 10 speed. Like, they didn't split their top gears. And when I got working there, I just hopped in it for a bit, and it was hard to shift splitting, trying to use the splitter because of years of not using splitting. Like, what occurred there? What causes that?
You say it wouldn't shift, or they just didn't use it?
They didn't use it, but then when I went to use the split after this many years, the timing was off. I couldn't shift for the life of me. And I was talking to someone else about it, and they said that'll happen if you don't split your gears. Like, they're not getting wear, I guess. I'm not sure how it works. That's what I was asking. Hopefully you could explain. But the not splitting of the top end, and then all of a sudden, after 3 years of not splitting, someone's trying to split them, and it doesn't want to time right. Like, it doesn't want to work right.
Well, I guess my guess on that would be anytime you don't use it, those pistons and O-rings and things, they get stuck. It don't matter what system you have going on or what air dryer, you do get a little bit of moisture in there. And over time of never using it, it will stick. If not, slow it down. And that's what I think's happening for you there, is it's shifting, but it's just slow, and it's just not bamming in there like it's supposed to,
Yeah, that makes sense, because I was like, oh yeah, no, we just drive like a 10 speed. Then I hop in and I'm like, what? This is ridiculous.
Our gravel truck does the same thing, Jordan. What I have to do in order to get it into high range those where those two little air lines go up and into your shift knob. I
Mhm.
pull it in high range, and then I have to unscrew the air knob, and then you can hear it clunk, and it goes in, and then I got to screw the air knob back in so I can shift to low range later.
That is greasy. That is greasy. Speaking of greasy clutching and shifting issues, I was on site the other day, and we had a gravel truck go down. Just clutch dropped to the floor. It's a hydraulic clutch. It dropped to the floor, and then popped back up with full pressure. And now, like, to get it back to the floor takes all the amount of strength you got in your leg to put it down. What you got any idea what happened there? Newer hydraulic clutch.
Not right off. One more time. Explain it to me one more time.
It was the guy was driving it, no problem. He was clutching, no problem. He stopped on site to go put it in gear. Thing dropped to the floor, no pressure, like just fell to the floor pretty much. Didn't know what was wrong. Put his foot there. Next thing you know, it pops back up at him full pressure, and now we can't even put that clutch down pretty much without a ton of power.
So it came and went
Yeah.
quickly like that. Is it a air assisted?
I don't know.
See, some of the newer ones are air assisted hydraulic.
Yeah.
Oh.
And if that air system ain't working right, it'll make your clutch feel so funny and just act up crazy, things like that.
That would make sense.
That makes sense, especially with how cold it is in Manitoba right now. Maybe you're getting
Well-
a little bit of ice issue in the air system.
That ice in the air, and even if there's some condensation in that the tank itself for the clutch oil, and I was like, well, maybe that some fluid in there. Okay. Funny enough, though, we had to get it off site to the shop, and they were gonna tow it, and I was like, "F that! I'm gonna put it in low gear, and I'm gonna start the thing and start driving." That's exactly what I did. Just use the low gear to start it. She had a hard time, and she clunked up, started going, and then that was like.
I'm not gonna lie. I've had a truck that I hopped in for a guy, and he blew a clutch, and it was in the middle of the road. He's like, I can't move it because the clutch is gone. Hopped in the truck, and I have just jammed that thing into low gear real quick. And
really?
You can do it. Oh yeah,
yeah. I've done it at stop signs. Like you're not moving, and you're just like, fuck it, you just pull it in as fast as possible.
I mean, she'll move. That was a Super B with 140,000 pounds on it. And
Oh, that's
like
bad.
she,
Yeah.
but you know
I
what I'm
was
saying? Like
empty, Chase. Jeez.
if you've already grenaded your clutch, well,
That was our thing. I was like, this thing's going to the shop. What's starting it in gear gonna do? It was fine.
oh yeah,
I could have kept hauling gravel on site with it.
just park on a hill so that you're facing the right way. So when
Yeah.
you start, you just feel those gears, and you don't even need the clutch.
Oh, I was ridiculous. Okay, the gear man's listening to these conversations. They're like, no wonder our transmissions are so messed up coming in the shop.
I've had some customers come all the way from the middle of the United States over to me and not have a clutch. And I ask them, how do you make it through the red lights when, situations like that? And they say, you just got to time it right.
Yeah, I know. I when I was doing like I don't know if I had a red light, but I had stop signs, intersections, and I'm like, Kip, just go real slow, like take it back. It was dark fortunately, so no headlights, nothing. Okay, now it's giver. Like you're just easing off of it. Go slow. Okay, we're gonna go. Now it's fast.
To be fair, that's pretty well the way I normally always drive a truck, though. Like,
Yeah,
if I know I've got a
yeah.
red light, I'll hang back a good 40, 50 feet, and I'll just put it in low range, and I'll just let that truck idle up until I try and time it so that I watch the other light change. Then you get a red, they get the yellow. Okay, there we go. And then I can start getting gears moving again. Like, I never like stopping that truck because it's too hard on a drivetrain to stop and start constantly.
Even in a pickup truck, if like there's a red, if we're in a small stretch between lights and then it goes green, guys floor it and then they stop at the next one. Like, I'll like just get up to speed, slow down. Like, if the one in front of you is red too, you might as well wait till it turns green to get up to speed and start going again. Like, why fly to the next one when it's that red still?
Okay, I got one question I'm dying to ask Mike, because it's the one question I kind of asked. I never got an answer to really well for in the transmission guy side of things. When you're shifting your auxiliary, clutch or no clutch on the auxiliary, because it doesn't have an auxiliary. Does clutching your main help?
Okay, I mean, what exactly you call an auxiliary? I mean, the rear section of a transmission is called auxiliary. So is that what you're saying?
No, your 4-speed auxiliary, your brownie box.
Oh,
where you have a
Well,
normal transmission, a drive shaft, an auxiliary four-speed transmission. drive
okay,
shaft.
yeah. I mean, myself, I guess I would want to use a clutch.
Big clutch guy over here. Jeez.
Yeah.
But does the clutch, when you break the torque, I guess it should in theory, but like when you clutch in your first transmission, does that still relieve the torque that's still spinning into your auxiliary?
Well, I don't know. I'll be totally honest with you. Even when I grew up in my grandfather's garage and piddling, there wasn't many auxiliaries in the coal fields. This is something, I mean, I know about it and I have worked on them, but as far as being very popular in my area, they're not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, so, I ain't gonna say there ain't somebody that couldn't answer that better, but to me, it's just, I don't know. The more you got going on, I guess I'd want to release the torque somewhere. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I didn't not know that auxiliaries weren't I just assumed that they were a relatively more common thing across North America.
I'd say even like Manitoba, we'd have less trucks with auxiliaries.
Maybe it's for the mountains. Like I know,
I'd say so.
At Bar S, Shelley, she had a like a 2019 Peterbilt. Her low bed truck still had an auxiliary transmission, that Brownie box. Even on a 2020, I had a 2010 Kenworth. It was just a 2-speed auxiliary, but the auxiliary is really, really nice because it goes back to that 15 double over. I was always told that a 15 double over means that you have a 15 speed in your main with an overdrive, and then you have a 4-speed or a 2-speed auxiliary where you either have a 1-1 ratio on first if it's a 2-speed, or you have a low, and then you have you have a deep reduction, a low, a main, and then fourth is an over. So a double over was always your auxiliary gave you that overdrive. So you still had the low end torques to start out, but then when you get up to highway speeds, you could get that double over.
Yeah. I mean, that would be doable and probably, I mean, that would be something probably that would be good. You know what I'm saying? But like a lot of people keep asking me about that, and then, the ones that I knew of and the ones that I was a part of building and the ones that I have done years ago, everything you had in the low side, you just moved it to the top side. So as much as you gained on the top end, you lost it on the bottom.
Yeah, that's why I always thought you would put an auxiliary behind it, because then if you have 2 low gears on that auxiliary, like I had a my Kenworth
they didn't do that here.
No?
Again, they didn't do that here.
Oh, because you could run like a set of like 343 rear ends or something, and you would still have 2 low gears on your bottom end, and you could get that truck moving at 160 kilometers, 100 mile an hour, 110 mile an hour. But you could still have your low torque. Like I remember truck drivers pulling trains with 130,000 pounds back in the day, saying that they could get those trains up to 150 kilometers an hour across the prairies.
Using kilometers. You're confusing the poor guy.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty neat. I mean, that's, like I say, that sounds doable, but
that's how we did it with Carl, because it had a set of 7.5 rear ends. 7.5 rear ends with a 15-speed and a 4-speed auxiliary, both of them having the overdrive. And with 7.5s, you could still get up to 110 kilometers an hour, 60 mile an hour with 7.5s.
Do y'all not run like 2-speed differentials up there very much?
No, I've never really.
Just single axle trucks. You see a lot of them in the older single axle trucks. Like,
see, down here, that was a big thing. We have, the Eaton has big 2-speed rears, and I can remember working on those ever since I was a little bitty fella.
Yeah, Chase. Yeah, maybe it is a mountain thing because you probably don't see them, but like in the prairies, you're like any old grain truck you go to has a 2-speed rear end if it's a single axle. Typically, even like my one truck, because you have these older trucks, gas engines with a 4 or 5-speed in it. You can get that. Like my boom truck it doesn't have a split diff, and it goes like 70 kilometers an hour. I don't know what that is in mph, but not very fast. So like a lot of those trucks had the 2-speed diff.
How did those 2-speed diffs work? Like, I don't understand how you get 2 gears into a differential. Was it just a transmission mounted in front of the differential?
Well, that's for the
No.
gear, man.
No, it's a big healthy differential, and it has I think they call it a sun gear that slides in and out, and just the way the housing's made, and it has a whole different set of, well, they're called planetaries in there that works with the axle gears and stuff. I mean, it's a pretty complex little system. I was trying to think if I had any brass pins left. People, they got brass pins in there that runs inside the planetaries, and whenever we would put them in, new, we would keep those and make hammers out of them.
Ah.
And but no, that was the real popular thing, and I have tons of memories and experience I can tell you about those. I can say that.
Okay, because I was super curious because our e-axles have 3-speed rear ends. Because the motor is on the axle, it has a 3-speed rear end with a set of planetaries. And I have no experience whatsoever working with that.
Yeah, if you've seen I mean, do y'all have wheel lock up there? Surely you have wheel lock.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've seen those, the way on a wheel lock, it has like a hub that slides on the axle, and you have a longer set of splines, and it slides back and forth on that axle, and in return slides in and grabs part of the inner case to make it somewhat lock. But the 2 speeds were kind of different, but it kind of worked on the same basis. It had a big sun gear, they called it. It slid out that went into a different set of, somewhat axle gears, but it wasn't splined to the axle, so to speak, is how the 2 speeds worked. But I mean, it's almost the same scenario, but at the same time, it's different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting these because nobody is like taken one of these apart yet. Like I don't know anyone that's experienced with them because they're a goofy setup, and it's the one part of the truck that's making me nervous is having any kind of transmission or anything, like any kind of gear shifting in the rear end. I've just never dealt with that before, and honestly, I don't know what kind of gears you could fit in a rear end that are going to handle the torque of those electric motors. Like, surely they must. These are billion-dollar companies doing this research, but that seems kind of hokey.
You're worried about split diffs. Oh boy.
I am worried about split diffs.
Do you all run like Telma brakes up there? Do you know what that is?
No.
Tell me more.
See, down here, the garbage trucks, they're the ones that runs it the most time. Is a garbage truck starts and stops all the time. So it's called a Telma brake. It goes on to the front diff, and it looks like a well, it is a bunch of big magnets and motors, and what it does, it works like a magnet, and it helps slow down the whole truck.
Yes, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
I don't. That's cool though.
Yeah. And it's a big heavy rig. I mean, it's hard to work on. But that was when I used to work at the dealership, and I haven't had to fool with it much since, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah. How often do customers come in with a problem? Like, say they've ripped out their diff lock and they say, I don't know how it happened, and you clearly know what they did wrong, and they're like, nope, that wasn't it.
Man, I could give you some really good stories.
I want to hear some of these stories.
Well, that's what a podcast is for.
I had a fella come in one time. Well, he called me and he says, truck won't move. Said, can you come check it out? And where I'm a one-man show, it's kind of hard to leave what I'm doing to go look at one. But, one exit above my shop is a big industrial park that has, a lot of trucks going in and out. And so I'll go up there to look at it. and the fella says, you know, he says he won't move, and he was a foreigner fella. I guess I'm going to talk about him because he tried screwing me over to a certain extent. But anyway,
All good.
he I told him, I mean, I don't know if he could understand me or not, but I said, flip your interlock in, you know, flip your interlock, lock your diffs together and try moving it. And the thing is, I don't think he knew what I said. So I go back there and, you know, the front drive line's turning and the rear one's not. So, you know, I said, you know, I feel like you've got a diff out or an axle broke. And, well, long story short, this was like on a Friday. He called, I told him I couldn't work on it till Monday. He had called everybody in my area to come and look at that by Monday, and he had pissed off everybody by Monday. And he called me back wanting me to work on it, and I start calling around to try to find some things because it was a Freightliner and had Mercedes differentials in it.
Ooh, okay.
And start calling around to try to find some things, and you know, amongst doing this, I find out that he has called everybody in the area. And he has pissed them off too. I don't know what exactly he done to some of them, but enough to where they were aggravated and they didn't want to deal with the fellow.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, it ended up being an axle broke. And he wanted it. I was getting ready to go on vacation, and I was like, man, I mean, I'm sorry it's kind of ended up like this, but I said, I'm going to be gone next week. And
Yeah.
said, you know, you can, the only way you're going to get this here is to, and gosh, there was so much went on. But anyway, coming into the end of the week, and I said, the only way you're going to get this here is to fly it in. And end up, but like I said, it was an axle. And by the time he paid for the axle, it was like a super rare. I'm telling you, there was like 3 in the eastern United States.
Oof, not good.
He had to pay, you know, an axle's not light. So when you pay air freight on that, it's not cheap. And, but he was aggravated, and, well,
I can
I
imagine,
imagine
so.
paying air freight on an axle would probably cheaper to go to a truck wrecker yard and get a full new set of rear ends.
well,
Probably.
I think just that axle ended up costing him like $800.
Yeah, well, that's not too
You
bad.
know,
But
well,
all
that's
that
not as bad
time,
as I thought.
all that time down. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, this guy, he just, where I couldn't get on it when he wanted me to, you know, unfortunately, it put him behind on my list, and you know, he took matters upon his own hands and ordered a whole nother differential. And I was like, man, I didn't say it's a differential just yet, you know.
Yeah.
You know, let's not get the cart before the horse here. And he didn't, you know, I did get him a price on them, but he didn't want to go with any of the prices that I had or my local people. And he ordered one from out west, and they sent it. And after I told him, I was like, I told you, man, this is an axle, not an old differential.
So he had to pay for a diff too then.
Well, no, he told me to refuse the shipment on the differential to where it got
that
sent
makes
back.
you look bad then.
Yeah, I mean, this dude was I'm talking a piece of work.
Yeah.
And like I said, the axle cost all that. And I mean, even though it just took an axle, I still had a ton of time on him. Plus, you know, I mean, if I'd have never heard from the guy again after Friday, I wouldn't have worried about it. But as far as when I went and checked it out, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
where I had him in my shop, and, you know, yes, I'm going to tack that time onto the bill because, you know, it was part of it.
Did he pay
100%.
up? Was he good?
Well, that's the thing about it. He tried to claim that I unauthorized used his card, is what pissed me off about it. See,
Ooh.
and but the funny thing is I had so many voicemails of talking to the fella. I mean, the voicemails and texts of even talking about the bill.
Yeah.
Plus, he actually used the same card to pay the wrecker to bring it to the shop, but he said he didn't have to fix it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. You know what I don't understand about this idiot? So this guy can source his own differentials and axles, go out, find his own part, but he was too dumb to realize he could put his inner axle lock in and still drive?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I can't believe, I honestly think that, well, see, that's another thing. Amongst all of that stuff going on, somebody that had came to look at it, the driver had freaked out on him and wouldn't let him into the truck to try it out or to do something. And it's almost like he must have had something, you know, in the cab he didn't want nobody to know about or something. I don't know.
I don't know. You know, the amount of people, though, that shock me that just do not know how their differentials or interaxle work. Like, I've seen so many trucks spun out on the hills in the wintertime with just one tire spinning, and you're like, you got your diffs locked in? Oh, yes, yes, yes. I have all my diff locked. And I hop into I'm like, I can see that you have an interaxle on the front of your differential there. It's clearly either not working or you don't have it. Look in there. He's got a full set of lockers, 2 diff locks and an interaxle, and didn't push one of those switches when spun out on a hill. I'm like,
Yeah.
He pushed him in there and he launched and lifted and he was gone.
It's bad though. Like the amount of drivers, like I know we talk about a lot of trucking and the things we see. The other day I was coming into town. It was probably 11 o'clock at night and there's a semi in the middle of the road stopped. And I was like, okay, that's probably bad. I stop, wait for the guy. He comes out. I'm like, okay, like, you know, I thought I thought maybe he had a heart attack or something. Stop like crooked in the middle of the road. He's like, I'm lost. I'm like, okay. So we start talking and a new Canadian. And we just get he's like, I'm supposed to go to Yorkton, Saskatchewan. It's about 3 hours from me. But I'm like, have you typed the address in on your maps? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, see how like the line is 3 hours from here and there's telling you to make turns? Yeah. Why are you stopped here then? Like, it's telling you where he had the GPS pulled up and he was lost. And I'm like, you have it in your phone, and he had no idea where he's going. It was just like, this is terrible. And then I dealt with a driver today who exact opposite. He had maps printed out, he had his phone up, he was really good. I was like, okay, like, how is there such a separation here? How is it so polar opposites for some of these people?
There are 2 distinct kind of drivers that exist in the trucking world. And there's the one type are incredibly bright people that I love talking to. They love trucking because they love the freedom of the road. They like listening to their podcast, their music. They love being absorbed in their own thoughts, and they're incredibly, incredibly smart with lots of ideas. And then there's other people where they are too dumb to do any job but hold a steering wheel. There's either ones that are too smart to work at any other job because they like thinking about their own things, or they're too dumb to do any job, and that's the only 2 you get, it seems.
It does seem like there's a lot where, like, I'm like, it's so funny though, because like you go low bedding or some heavy step deck work, and you're like, dang, like you gotta know what you're doing, you gotta know your weights, like it's a lot to it. Then you see some drivers like, oh my gosh, truck drivers are so dumb. Like, I feel terrible saying that. Truckers, we're all smart. You're all geniuses.
The ones that listen to this podcast are smart.
Yeah, you're all geniuses.
To be fair, I'm assuming our listeners have like a 99% or fall into that smart category because they're like, oh, I'd love to listen to podcasts and learn everything.
I don't know. They listen to us though. Like that might say the opposite.
Okay, they were smart coming into the podcast.
Exactly.
Every time they listen to one, just one IQ comes off the top.
No, a lot of we get a lot of texts, and like I've Snapchat talked a lot. A lot of guys are owner operators. Thanks for this. I do think a lot of our listeners are pretty bright people. It's just so funny seeing the polar opposite end. Like this guy, he literally had it in on his GPS. He just had to keep following it. I had to go turn him around, and he wanted to turn around. I'm like, okay, like literally 500 yards from here, there's a massive parking lot. I'll get you turned around. So I go. There's even a loop for truckers in the parking lot. And he turns around at the entranceway of it in the intersection where there's just enough room, which I was actually like, good for you. But like, just follow me, like I said. Take you through this massive trucker loop.
So I got another question for Mike here. This is one of the debates that was going on heavy last year on Trucker Talk. Where do you stand on running your interaxle lock full time?
I'll just say this: if it was mine, I wouldn't. How's that?
I'm
not going to say it's going to hurt anything because I mean it's made to where it won't hurt anything. I mean, what little damage it would do would, it would take a long time, just to keep pressure on your, interlock diff fork. I mean, that's about all it's going to do, really. I mean, to be honest.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it were mine, I wouldn't. But, I don't know.
I think my thing is like in the wintertime, I like having the extra traction.
Well,
Yeah,
extra
I totally
traction.
understand that.
And I like we were very mild weather. You're pure ice the other day. I Jake slid without it on, so I put it on the next corner, and then I wasn't Jake sliding anymore. Like it was so pure ice. I was so light. I was sliding, but then when I spread that weight out, and I like it's better for traction. Better
That's
for control,
why I say
stopping
when you're in slippery conditions, run your inner axle like winter.
I highly recommend that. Yeah.
And then if you get really slippery, run your lockers, full lockers, diff lock and inner axle all the time, completely while you're in those slippery conditions while you're going slow.
Slippery as in no asphalt.
Yeah,
No, pure ice.
Sorry,
Yeah.
whereabouts are you from, Mike? I don't actually know where you're from.
I'm from Southwest Virginia.
You don't get a lot of snow and ice there, like my 40 below then, I guess.
Not like you all know.
Okay,
No.
yeah.
In the recent years, it's less and less.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's I always say though, like run your full set of lockers when you're in the snow. Interact like if you're in slippery conditions going downhill or anything, full lockers and diff locks.
Yeah.
And there's a trick. You cannot steer if you have your full lockers in. It's going to push you straight unless you get onto your Jake. As you need to turn, you hammer on the Jake. It'll for some reason puts the weight onto the steer axle. I don't understand the which you could help, but you can turn with lockers on while you're jaking, but you can't. You go straight if you have them on and don't jake.
I don't know what's doing it, but the energy, like obviously the energy transfer when you're going forward, it's in your front end. It's lifting you, but when you're stopping from the energy transfer from the engine, again in the front, putting pressure negatively. You feel the truck. You feel it go forward when you have like heavy jakes on, like a good traction. Like you can feel the truck going forward. So that makes sense that for steering, it's putting all that weight forward on your steer tires. I don't know exactly where the transfer is happening, but like it makes sense that it would steer better.
Yeah, I got a question for you. I mean, this is one side of it that I wouldn't know is there a difference in fuel mileage between running diff lock and not?
It's so small in the difference. I've done a trip with the diff locked and I drove 500 kilometers, Grand Prairie, Edmonton one day. What's that work out to? Like 300 and something odd miles. And I did one time with the inner axles in, and the other day I'm like, it's a sunny day, I'll just take the inner axle out. And I did it. And the difference was about 2-3 liters in fuel, and that could have been the slight difference of did I have a headwind or not. So I really didn't like 1 mile per gallon difference over 300 miles is a statistical rounding error. So no, I didn't notice any different.
But that was up and down type terrain.
No, that was in the prairies, so that was relatively flat ground.
Yeah.
And one thing I was told is the one thing you will blow out a rear end if you're driving a tri-drive without your inner axle in. You will do a lot of damage.
Pardon?
Yeah, see, those are really rare down here too, as well.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because the tri-drives, like even like Heavy Haul and Fool had that one video like, unless you're driving a tri-axle, lower your voice when you're talking to me. And I'm like, his truck's a drop axle. Like,
it's not even a
that's
drive.
not even a tri-drive, boy.
Yeah. But no, it's what happens in a tri-drive is with those 3 axles, if you were to picture them in a row, if you're going down uneven terrain, it can be something even just like going over a large speed bump or something. But if you are a slight curve or a grade, your front tire and rear tire are touching and your middle one kind of has no pressure on it and it lifts up, or the weight comes off of it. The bags don't adjust in time as they take time to inflate. So as you hit that difference in elevation, that middle axle spins really quick. Like you'll sit there and one tire will spin, and then as you come down, it suddenly contacts, and you take a tire that's spinning at full speed, and you suddenly load 40,000 pounds onto it again.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Which is why I was told to always run your inner axle. And like you see some guys and they swear that never run your lockers in the wintertime because you'll crash. And I'm like, no, that's just not. No.
Yeah, well, I've definitely gone straight through a corner because of my lockers. That's a different issue. That was young Jordan. Pre-class 1 Jordan.
Fair enough.
Muddy too. Wasn't even snow. I was cruising through a field. I was 17. I had to leave a field. And full speed out of the field. It was super mucky. Got to the road, no steering. Got to the far side of the road. Finally got a little bit of traction. Did not crash. Was happy that it didn't.
Fair enough. Hey, Mike, I got a question. On the topic of dumb things that people have clearly done with a transmission, what is like the worst example of a transmission that you've ever seen?
What, like as far as an example
of like, how did you do this kind of mentality?
Like they showed up,
possibly have to do this.
They showed up and it was missing. Like there was no transmission. Like, oh, I swear it was there. Like,
I have one really close friend that I could tell some stories on him, but I don't want to. I mean, he's one of those, he's so funny. I mean, if he can make it another week, he will run it. And it's just so funny. And I just don't, some of it, he might make a little extra money out of it, but for the biggest part of it, I swear I feel like that he, loses over it, because it runs into bigger things. It ain't been long ago. I took one out and went to take the shifter boot out of it, and it was a daggum, the boot you put around the, you have your vent tube. Down here we have a vent tube coming out of the top of the house. I assume it's like that up there as far as for your bathroom, your sewage. They had used that rubber that you put around that boot. around that vent tube. That's what they were using for a shifter boot. I was like, what the hell is it?
Oh, speaking of washroom shifter boots, have you ever ran into this in the real world of the urban legend of the truck driver that cut a hole in his floor and you look over and the drive shaft is a blender, for lack of a better term?
I've heard that, but I've never seen it.
I've been hearing that more and more, but I've seen it. Like I haven't seen anything on it or actually like witnessed it happening. But I believe it does happen. It's gotta happen.
Like that one fella that gave me a hard time. He was a foreigner, but I'll be honest. I have met so many great foreigners. Great people. I mean, lots of times when people come, they tell me what's going on, and I'll say, would you like for me to get a wrecker? And sometimes I end up taking these people to the hotel myself. And you get to meet with them and talk with them. Some of them just really great people, but something about the foreigners there, they are completely scared of the dealerships for some reason. I don't know why, but they do not want to go near a dealership. I don't know why. I mean,
I know why. The price is 50% more.
Well, I mean, on some things, but some things not. I mean, I'm not the cheapest person out there, but you know what though is like, I will trust a man like yourself that's got his own shop and doing it over a dealership. I once had to get a new clutch in my one truck, and or what was I doing? No, it broke the transmission mount, snapped transmission mount, and they did the clutch while we had it out there. But they did it, and this is Kenworth themselves. The truck rolled out of the shop. I got about 5-6 hours down the road. The transmission dropped off the back. They did not secure any bolts to the bell. They were all loose, and it just physically dropped off. Like it just separated from the bell housing.
Did your shifter just fall out? You're just holding your shifter. Next thing you know, whoop, it's gone.
That's it. Well, I mean, it still had its transmission mount, so it didn't follow. But I mean, it backed out, and all of a sudden, she just slipped in gear, and like you're just spinning. And I'm like, horrible grinding noise, and like, yeah, the shifter got dropped down that little bit, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, it totally fucked up the whole end of the bell housing, fucked up the input shaft of the transmission, and it spent a month back in the dealership. Then the dealership, they came back and they tried to bill me for like $15,000, and they're like, well, yeah, the transmission coming out was our fault, but we still have to do all of the and these costs need to be on you because we did all that. And like, no, you literally only had to fix a transmission mount, and I said, let's do the clutch while we got it out. And you grenaded my entire setup. I'm not paying that. But like, after that, I'm like, I'm not going back to the dealership. I will go to the small shop that remembers to put the bolts back in.
Or if they don't, they feel bad about it and fix it for you, actually. Like, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, the service managers and the service managers and stuff, I mean, no offense towards any of them out there, but a lot of them haven't turned wrenches themselves. And, you know, I feel like they should have to. You know, I feel like, you know, when I worked at a dealership, see, as I told you earlier, Gearman 93, I graduated in 1993. Well, my last year of high school, I got out half a day to go work for my grandfather. And he had a garage, and that's where I grew up. But I mean, I was patching inner tubes, cold truck inner tubes, and riding them up and down the creek when I was 12. And, but anyway, when I worked for my grandfather, and then I went to the dealership, you know, I was trained. I mean, I did not get to do nothing. I would work my butt off washing things just to get to touch things to put them together. You know, then, you know, when I wanted to move out of the area. So, you know, I applied at the dealership and went there. And, you know, back then, you know, the shop manager then, I talked about him there a little bit the other day, but, you know, he was sharp as a tack. I mean, he used to be a mechanic. I mean, you used to just move up out of mechanics to the shop foreman and service writer and stuff, but that's just completely different now.
No, I think almost with any job, any senior management position should always be filled by someone who's done that position or knows something about it, because then when issues arise, they have their own solutions. Like, you can't do these things. You can't just do that.
In trucking.
Dispatchers
I've had are ones that have driven the truck. Like, a dispatcher for a low bed that's pulled a low bed is 100 times better dispatcher.
Yes. And it's the same way with the parts man, too. I mean, you know, some of them, well.
Oh, can I just say that partsmen are a severely underappreciated, and parts people are getting worse and worse and worse, I've found.
So true. And like when I find a good one, like I call a few companies, oh yeah, no, I can't find it, sorry. Fine, they got a guy's like, you know what, let me check. I'll call you back. Okay, you're not calling me back. I got to call back. Hey, yeah, I found one this place. I found a shipper, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, you're my guy from now on. Anytime I order anything, I don't even care if it's more expensive. I call him this guy. Because, like, he'll find it for me. He'll put the effort in.
And it's just the knowledge that they have when you ask for parts that I find so frustrating. Like, now that there's just a couple, like, go-to ones I call. And you're like, hey, I need a fuel pump for a Big Cam 400. What's the VIN number on the truck? No, that's not going to help you. I need a fuel pump for a Big Cam 400. Well, I need the last 6 digits of the VIN. Well, there's only 5 digits on this truck, and that's not the truck that came with motor that came with the VIN.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it's like, no. We are doing some very custom things here. Or like seems like it's why I can't go to the dealerships anymore, because of that same issue. Is that, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but they're not mechanics anymore. They're computer technicians. What they want to do is hook a laptop up to it, and they want the computer to tell them what's wrong and a step-by-step how to fix it. I'm like, bitch, I could fucking do that with YouTube myself. I am here because I have a problem with my truck. I don't want you to just hook a computer up because this truck was made in 1969 and it doesn't have one. But come out, have a listen to it. I listen to it every day. I can tell that there's a slight thing weird. Can you give me like maybe it just needs a valve set or something, but something feels a little off on that top end. they're like, well, I don't know how to, what do you mean? Something sounds off. And I've taken that same motor, that same truck after Kenworth, and I went down to a small shop and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. And he's like, oh, I know exactly what's wrong. And it was like a 1 hour repair bill. 1 hour repair bill. He looked at the truck, he listened, he pulled one valve cover off, he just set it by ear, and then he was good to go. And I'm like, oh, okay, this sold me on never going back to the dealerships.
Yeah, I don't know. That's such a rare thing now. I'm just looking at the workforce coming up, and it gets me sad every time I think about it. It's depressing.
We used to have one mechanic when we were logging at the one company in up north. He was literally able to tell if you had a bent push rod he could wrap on the push rod with a hammer, and he could listen to the sound of the push rod, and he would tell you exactly which push rod was bent in that block just from the sound it made from tapping on it.
That would be fairly impressive.
Yeah, my grandfather, he used to adjust the timing by putting his hand in the exhaust sometimes.
That's pretty cool.
I was like, boy, I'll never get there. I don't get
it. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm getting at, though. Like when I listen to you talk on TikTok about the way you can explain transmissions and make sense, and it's like, why would I want to go to a dealership and have some second-year technician have a look at the transmission when I could take it to somebody like yourself who's an expert and actually know what's going on, instead of like, I feel like if you go to a dealership, all they're going to say is like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with your transmission. Well, we'll order you a brand new Eaton.
Yeah,
it should be here in 2 weeks. And you go to Mike and he's like, oh, I know exactly what's wrong with this transmission. We'll just tear it apart. Put a new shift fork in. It was just your shift fork. We'll just put a new one in. You'll be back on the road.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of I mean, there's a ton of eager young men out there that's going to be good mechanics and are, but you know, I mean, even me, when I buy something or something and I want to research it, I'll go to YouTube. You know, I will go to YouTube, and I feel like a lot of these younger guys, they look to YouTube and some type of a video, and you know, a lot of the content I make, I feel like I want to and try to make it to where it's real world scenario. You know, I don't want to know what the book says all the time. Yes, that's really good to know, but that's just half the battle is what the directions say lots of times. And, you know, lots of times it's rarely ever a textbook case. So therefore, you know, that's where I try to, you know, share my experience to try to cut some of that down for people. And I'm in the process. I'm going to make some videos as far as building transmissions, and it won't be like you would get, you know, out of some kind of a class. It will be real world scenario type things, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to work like that, kind of a dummy proof kind of thing. I mean,
so I can watch these and learn from them.
You can definitely watch and learn from.
Yeah, perfect.
You know what? The one video.
I have to read something 2 or 3 times sometimes before I completely understand it. You know, so I just want to speed that process up for everybody else, I guess.
I mean, some of your videos have actually really helped me. I think my most influential video I've had from you is your checkpoint. Get to a checkpoint and then stop. That's the one thing like I've brought even into like the guys that work in our shop now. I'm like, okay, like if you're at a checkpoint and it's the end of the day, go home. Like that, it made so much sense. Instead of working up until like the exact clock or the break time, work up until the point where you're okay. I'm at a spot where I can leave it and come back.
Yeah. As long as people are
the morale at the shop. You know, people. There wasn't nothing I would hate worse than to go in behind somebody and start where you thought they left off, and then find out that you had to take back apart what you had done because they hadn't done something before that where you thought they had stopped. You know what I'm saying? And gosh, I would get so aggravated, you know. And
oh yeah, somebody else. You know, my problem was I forget where I left off when I go back if I don't do that. I forgot where I was. And then I spend the next 20 minutes figuring it out.
Yeah, you can get a phone call, or somebody can smash a finger, or anything can happen to where you have to leave. And just try to you never know what's going to happen, but just try to get. I mean, surely if somebody smashes a finger, you need to jump out right then. But at least get back under there and get it to a point to where the next person coming will know exactly where you dropped off.
I mean, that's just it's one of those things that if you don't think about it, and like how many years I've been wrenching and I've never thought about it until you made it. I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. But
yeah, it's something so simple that just it's just and bolt pans too. A lot of people just throw their stuff on the floor or whatever, and every transmission I put in, I put new oil in it, and I end up with a ton of buckets. I'm sure you've seen my wall of buckets, and I just cut the bottoms of them off and make pans, bolt pans, and if
Yeah, I like the idea of the bolt pans, even not always the magnetic, just something separate of a container. Because I'm not an experienced mechanic, so I can mix things up. I don't know which bolt goes where sometimes. So it's like you're taking off 4 or 5 different items to get to what you want to. Okay, the bolts that hook this up, let's put them in this pan. The bolts that did this pan, like you separate everything. Then when you're putting it back together, or say I hire my guy to put it back together. Hey, each bolt's in a separate spot. Like you're not all mixed up, and here's a cluster of crap. Figure it out.
oh, see, my way of doing it, and the one way I have to, and the way I tell everybody is that you take a bolt out, put that bolt back exactly where it should be. Like if you're taking a part off and you've got 4 empty spaces for bolts and you remove that part, just put them in a couple threads. So when you go to put that part back, those bolts are right there, because if this project is going to take 3-4 days, somebody's going to move that or knock that over, or you'll lose one and it rolls away, and then where do you find that one goddamn bolt?
Not a 1960s Kenworth. Sometimes we work on things where you need the room where the bolts are. Still need that room, boy. No, I get what you're saying. If you can put them back, hell yeah, put them back. I'm just, even when it's tight and like you want to get a wrench in an area and that bolt be in the way, put them in a separate bin. Don't mix them up. So much easier.
Fair enough.
Come on, Chase, you and your old Kenworth. You can put a lazy boy in some of the engine bays you work on.
I mean, that's true. I can literally sit under my front bumper and work, but most trucks you can do that. Most things you can do that. Like you're taking off an exhaust clamp, just put those bolts back into the exhaust clamp, then set the exhaust clamp aside. Most things you can do that way.
Yeah, like stuff you take off like that. No, for sure. Yeah.
It just makes such a big difference putting the bolts back, and it saves so much frustration. Because the one you lose is always a goofy, stupid sized bolt, and then you got to go to like the parts store, and you're like, none of the bolts in my bolt bin fit this size, and now I got to get 20 different bolts to bring back and try the different thread lengths until I find the one that actually works.
No, big old threads, and just cross thread them in there. Call it good.
Yeah, hit it with the impact and go a size up and metric. Hit it with the impact.
Give her good 15 Ugga-Duggas and
some red Loctite, and you're good.
Yeah, red Loctite. That is red Loctite.
Oh, so yeah, I guess we're getting into an hour. We gotta wrap up the final ones. But the one thing I did want to do is, because we're trying to get the tour of this truck, I really want to get his feedback once we get this truck built and see if he'd be okay bringing down those e-axles and going through them, because I'd love to have somebody that really knows what they're doing with those axles to really pull them apart after, the truck's got 30,000 K on it, and just see how it's actually wearing. And I want to know if they need to be like beefed up or what can be done with those gearing, because it's just, I have no clue. I've never worked with an e-axle, obviously.
You may find that really fast.
We might. I get worried that it's been designed by some guy sitting down in Silicon Valley or in an engineering floor that has no experience, and like I just want one good guy to like have a good look and see.
Did you say Silicon Valley?
Silicon Valley. Wasn't it close enough? Silicon
Valley.
Silicon? So I thought silicone, like, you put in like silicone titties. Is it silicone titties or silicone breast implants?
No. It's a different word. It's a
They're not. I thought it was called
Oh.
silicone because that's what makes the computer chips. That's why they're called Silicon Valley. That's why they're called like silicone because it's the same thing.
It might be spelled the same, but I know you pronounce it differently.
Really?
Yeah. I'm almost 1,000% sure.
I thought it was that. So have I been pronouncing the not that it comes up often, but like breast implants? Is that also silicone?
No, it's silicone, like silicone.
But they're spelled the same, and it's the same material. And
I-
that's because that's what's in the computer chip. Why would it be pronounced differently?
Okay, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure when guys say Silicon Valley, it's silicon. But maybe I'm wrong.
Silicone.
I think it's all according to who you ask and where they're.
It might be just the way accents say, because I'm like on TV, if you hear it, it's always Silicon Valley. But maybe they're just saying it fast, and it is silicon because it
Maybe
is
they
spelled
just don't want to be
silicon.
associated with boob jobs.
Maybe.
Okay, I gotta ask these final questions. If you could do anything but work on transmissions, like you'd pick any job in the world, what would you do?
As far as blue collar, right?
You can do whatever you want.
Any job you want. Like, no, should have went to law school. Should have went.
Yeah, I have said that if I could do anything else or could go back, I would probably go be a pharmacist.
Really?
Really?
That's an interesting one.
Because I've worked many years with my back, and every time I go into the drugstore to get my blood pressure medicine, all they're doing is taking a little knife and sliding them over and making six figures. I'm like, I could do that.
That's fair. All right. That makes sense. He has kind of sold me on the pharmacist.
I'm all for that opinion. I'm with it. I'm with it.
Yeah. No. At first, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Once you hear it, you're like, oh.
Hey,
He's a smart man.
anyone disagreeing, saying it's probably hard to think about your local pharmacist and be like, oh damn, he might be onto something.
You climate control building, they don't know what they got.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
Like, yeah, white lab coat, but you don't have to deal with like blood or like most doctors. Like you got to deal with you just sliding over some pills. You got to be smart enough to grab the right pills.
Yeah, it's all computer done now. I mean, they don't ever tell me what I should and shouldn't do. It's printed out on a paper with my stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, like the doctor recommends the amounts. You just got to put them together. Wait a second, you might be onto something.
I feel like old timey pharmacists though had to be the best job, 100%. Be like, oh, my back is aching. You're like, have you tried some onion flavored cocaine?
Yeah, honestly, like late 1800s, early 1900s. Oh, that would be the best.
Oh, that would be the best job. Like, I feel like you could just make it. Be like, have you tried drinking a lot more whiskey?
Yeah. Have you tried drinking more? Yes. Have you tried drinking more and hitting yourself with a hammer? No. Well, I'll try that next. Let me know how it goes.
Well, I'm not feeling good, pharmacist. What do you recommend? You'd be like, you got ghosts in your blood. You need leeches.
You got ghost in your blood. That's so aggy. You got that ghost blood, boy. You need leashes.
Oh,
Old timey doctors too. What a time to be alive! Like there's one thing for headaches. They put a steel bucket on your head and just hit it with a bat. Like what?
They have to be screwing with people.
They
And then they're
do.
like, I love that the nerve on those doctors too, where they're like, back then it was like, women can't be doctors. Only guys could figure out to put a bucket on your head and smack you with a bat.
Well,
Every time we try and bring women in, they keep wanting to do science. I just want to hit Steve with a bat. It seems to fix him.
yeah. Well, they thought trains would go too fast that people would die going that fast. Like how yeah, they when trains first were around, people like doctors, people like that thought you would die. Your body wasn't supposed to travel that fast.
What?
Yeah, you can look. It's old timey doctors were the dumbest people. I would have been such a sweet job.
No wonder
you-
they wanted to
Oh,
keep women
you
out.
need a
Like, they-
nail in your ear. That's bad, boy. You need a nail in your ear. That's gonna help you right up.
Be like, oh, I
It's a
sprained
missing
my...
elixir.
Oh, the elixir. See, that's what I picture the old timey pharmacist as, is the elixir tonic guys that would go
Yeah.
around. And they always, like, every historian looks at those things and they're like, yeah, it was just full of opium and cocaine. That's what these elixirs were. You
Like,
took a
that
bunch of
works
whiskey.
good.
Yeah, it turns out if you have like an 80 proof whiskey and you mix it with a bunch of cocaine, it makes you forget that your rheumatism's acting up.
Yeah.
Accurate.
Chase, I just sent you a picture. you're gonna love. Sorry.
Well, that works real well on an audio podcast.
I know it's just for you right now. It's before I forget.
Okay, we got to ask that final question. What is the dumbest job you have ever done? Like, what is the stupidest thing you've ever been called out for?
On a truck, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it could be any job.
What job
really.
on a truck? Like, where you get in there and you're like, it won't go into high range. And you're like, you're out of air in your tank or something ridiculous like that.
I'll tell this one, I guess. He was an older fella. Bless his heart, he's passed away now. He had the best attitude that ever was. But he was an older fella, and the poor fella, he couldn't even get under the truck because his health was so bad. And he said that when he would lay down, he would get dizzy, and he'd get vertigo. And amongst, knowing the fella, and we got to be friends. I mean, like I say, he's a great fella. His nickname for me was Vertigo. And I'd say, what you been doing, Vertigo? But anyway, I built the transmission for him. And here's another dealer story a little bit for you. But anyway, he'd went to a dealer somewhere out west. And he called me, he says, my transmission's leaking. And I was like, well, because he's all the way out west. Ain't no way I can help him all the way out there. So, I was like, see what you can get done. Let me know what's going on. We'll do whatever it takes, whatever. And so he sits there all day at the dealership, and they finally get it in there, and they pull the yoke off the back of the transmission and put a seal in it. And and I asked him, because I'd gotten worried myself because I knew they were working on it, and I called him. I said, well, what's the word? What was the problem? And he says, they just come out and told me that I was ready to go. I said, what do you mean? I mean, well, what was it? And they had pulled the yoke and put a seal in the back of the transmission, and then told him he was ready, and he didn't owe any money. And I'm like,
that seems wrong.
Something ain't right here. So, he says, well, I guess I'll just try to head home. He said they said I was okay. Well, he goes to the next truck stop, and he said there's a whole puddle of oil, oil under my truck. And I was like, well, can you not make out where it's coming from there, Vertigo? Remember, he can't get under the truck. And
Vertigo.
long story short, the poor fella, he comes all the way back. And again, I take pride in things I do, and I don't have problems. But, in this case, I thought I did. I'm not above something happening to something I do, but he brought it all the way back. And end up being a fuel line leaking over top of the transmission. And the thing is, he says he finally got under the truck, and he caught some of that oil in that bottle. He had a, like a 20-ounce Coke bottle there, and he had caught some of that oil in. And he handed it to me. I said, well, what's this? Because, I could see clearly it was fuel. And he goes, right there. I said, oh, it's leaking out. And I smelt it, just to be sure. But it looked like fuel. It was fuel. And like I say, he had took it to the dealership, and who knows what even went on there. But they put a seal in it and put it back and didn't charge this man a dime, and didn't even fix the bad fuel line. I don't understand, But but that poor old fella, he honestly thought his transmission was leaking, and there's a bunch of fuel leaking out on everything.
I guess I could see it if it's dripping down onto the transmission and then it mixes with any kind of grease or oil from a leaking seal. That would look pretty oily.
Yeah,
benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, the poor fella, he just didn't have a lot of knowledge. He drove for years, but, he just didn't have a lot of knowledge. But he was a super nice fella. And he's passed away now. I hate that. But that was kind of the most silly thing that I mean, he put it in that bottle and couldn't even tell that it was fuel versus gear oil.
Fair enough. I was like, oh, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, you know what? That always makes a good point. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, but everybody likes the nicest guy in the room. You don't have to be smart. Like, people never look down at somebody if they're not always the smartest feller, if they're a nice feller.
Yeah, poor old Vertigo.
Jeez. Oh, man. Well,
I had one fella talking about getting on the truck. He called me here. It's about a few months ago, I guess. And now, but I don't like to work on automatics. But if I'm slow, you know, I'll try to help people. But he said it wouldn't move. Or, you know, it was stuck. I can't even remember what it was now. But a lot of times when people call me about the automatics, is people don't realize is if those things don't have 12 volts, it will act up and do crazy stuff. I mean, if it's 11.8, it won't work. And they had called me and wanted me to come there and look at it. And I asked him, I said, because he's in like a Freightliner Cascadia or something. I said, can I get under it? He goes, yeah, you can get under it. And what I meant was would my fat ass fit up and under it? I wasn't asking him if I was getting permission to get under it. But I got up there and that thing was so low I couldn't even get under it.
jeez.
I said, man, I wasn't asking for permission. I was asking if I could fit under.
Were those side skirts just that low on those trucks, eh?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I had taken a creeper, but I couldn't even scoot under there on the ground. I couldn't even get under.
Jeez. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not even gonna touch that one. Oh no. But I'm no fan of automatics myself, though. There was one time I've driven an automatic once in my life, and I think I made it less than like 100, 200 miles down the road and completely grenaded that transmission. And they swore up and down. My truck went into the shop and they gave me a loaner truck while I was still working for another company. And they swore by this auto shift from Freightliner, and it's the best thing that you could ever have, and you'll never want to go back. Well, I was pulling a set of Jeep and Booster, and I think it was scaling in around like 200,000 pounds on this Taylor Hill, steep hill outside of Fort St. John, northern Canada, and a flagger stopped me on the hill, and that auto transmission, it would set off and it would get moving, and then it would automatically put itself into neutral with over torque every time it tried to launch, and it made me look like I just got my license. Like I was throttling in, the front tire would come up, it would come down, and it would stop, and everyone's looking at this truck on the hill just bouncing like it can't launch. And I kept doing that because every time I'd get like a foot, and I went the entire way up the hill just like launching this truck back and forth till the transmission finally grenaded. That was my only experience in driving an automatic, and all I will tell you is that it cannot pull. Like, at least with an 18, you can put it in low, let that clutch out, and like you can just let it crawl. But apparently you can't do that with an automatic.
Well, eventually they will, and eventually the manuals will be eventually a thing of the past. They will, I believe it. It's just like we're talking about, you know, as far as everybody nobody's quite the person they used to be so many years ago. You know, it just makes them easier to put in a truck. You know what I'm saying?
I'm genuinely wondering though, like with all these e-axles and the electric thing coming out, I wonder if there's no real transmission. Like there's those 3 little gears that play back and forth, but that's it. 3 gears, no automatic. Like it doesn't really shift in a certain way. It just moves gears.
Yeah, I've been seeing some stuff circulating over the Tesla truck now. What's their status on theirs right now?
Yeah, it's it's about the same way. It's just has a gear and a slip collar, and it moves forward and back based on how much power you need between those 3 drive motors, and it engages and disengages based on the power.